I am Arifin Graham, Seward member in Victoria in Canada, and I am very pleased to introduce to this circle a very old friend of mine and my wife Wiluya's, and the author of the Story of Phant, which we are going to tell you about today. Anita is a dear friend of mine and my wife Wiluya, and the author of the Story of Phant, which we are going to be talking about today. Anita was born in Riga, Latvia in 1933, and during her first year, she received a wee silk elephant called Phant, and from her aunt who lived in Berlin. Phant became her favorite toy. World War II broke out, and the family had to flee their home, taking with them only one suitcase each. And inside Anita's suitcase was her beloved Phant. He was lost during the family's escape from Latvia, but in her imagination, he lived on. Anita immigrated to Canada after the war, where she met and married her husband, Nicholas. They joined Subud in Ottawa in the 1960s, and through the Latihan received to move to Victoria, British Columbia on Canada's west coast. Phant was at the same time on his own adventures until 50 years after losing Phant, Anita found an exact replica of him at a Christmas bazaar and was overjoyed to see her little friend again. Anita is zooming into us today from her home on Vancouver Island. Anita, lovely to see you. And just to mention that Anita's grandson, Nicholas Klassen, made the illustrations for the book. He is an emerging artist and works in a wide variety of media. And I, as I said, am Arifin Graham, and I designed the book, The Story of Phant, and have assisted author Anita in its publication. So today we're going to do three short readings from the book, just to give you a sense of the writing and the story. And then Anita and I will discuss a little bit about the process, how she came to write the book, both from perhaps a practical and a spiritual or guided point of view. We'll let you know how we found the illustrator and how we've been taking Phant out into the world and wondering where we go next. So let's start with our readings. The first reading takes place in Berlin in 1933. And we pick up the story where a family's maid discovers a discarded pair of silk stockings. Over to you, Anita.
The next morning, Minna the maid saw the discarded gray silk stockings in the wastepaper basket, picked them up and looked at them closely. First she frowned and then she smiled because she had a splendid idea. I can make good use of these gray silk stockings, thought Minna. My church has a Christmas bazaar every year, and I shall cut out an animal and sew it into a stuffy. Now, what animal is gray? A mouse? A rat? No. I do not like rats. A snake? No, that won't do either. What else is gray? Lost in thought, Minna stuffed the gray silk stocking into her apron pocket. Minna, have you finished making the beds yet? She heard Mrs. Halbach calling. As she quickly left for the bedrooms, Minna had a brilliant thought. The gray silk stockings will make a perfect little elephant. That night, Minna started drawing a picture of an elephant. She was a good artist, but it took her all evening to get the picture just so. It had to have the right proportions and the exact measurements to make the cut pieces fit the stockings, to create a good little elephant. It was nearly midnight before Minna was satisfied with her creation and could at last go to sleep. In her dreams at night, Minna dreamt that the little elephant was traveling by train into a foreign country, that he traveled by horse and wagons through fields of sunflowers, that he sailed to an island, that he walked through big cities, and that he flew by airplane way up in the sky, far, far away, maybe to the moon. For the next week, Minna worked every evening on the little elephant. She sewed him by hand with tiny stitches to make sure that the cotton wool stuffing would not come out of the seams. For the tail, she braided some gray wool that she found in her darning basket. And for his eyes, she used a small little bit of black cotton thread. At last, the little elephant was ready. Minnie was pleased with the result, but rather sad that she would have to give him away to sell at the church bazaar. Oh well, thought Minna, I hope some nice child will receive the little elephant for Christmas and look after him well. The little fellow deserves the best. I've put a lot of love into him and I want him to be happy.
So at that Christmas bazaar in Berlin, little Phant was bought by Anita's aunt and given to her when she was less than a year old, after which he became a beloved companion in their next 10 years, idyllic years of growing up in Latvia. In this next piece, Anita, who is Tita in the story, and her family are in the middle of escaping from Latvia in 1944 by ship to the UK.
One morning, a messenger came to the cottage to tell the family to be ready that night to leave in a small open boat that would take them to the big harbor, where a ship would carry them to another country and safety. Each person would take only a small bag with them. It would be a very dangerous journey. With a dire warning, the man left them to get ready for their last escape. Tita decided to put Phant in her little suitcase, where he would be kept dry and safe. She placed him between her favorite white blouse and a cornflower blue dirndl skirt, and her favorite book, The Little Match Girl by Hans Christian Andersen. Dearest Phant, said Tita, you will be safe and dry here. We have to go on an open boat to the harbor. If I put you in my pocket, you're bound to get wet and cold, even fall into the sea, and I would lose you. That would break my heart. This gave Tita Phant another hug and kiss as some more tears landed on his head. Goodbye for now, little Phant. We shall have a good cuddle in a cozy berth on the big ocean liner tomorrow night. Tita closed the suitcase and was ready to join her family for the dangerous trip to the harbor where the big ocean liner lay. After what seemed a long time, the family reached the marina to wait for the open boat. Other people were waiting in the dock too, hoping for a chance to escape the fighting. Everyone was worried that the open boat would not be large enough to carry everyone on board. When she heard the captain say, "No more, we are overloaded," the luggage on the dock had to be left behind. Cast off. Let us hope that we make it across these dangerous waters. Tita was feeling cold and miserable. All she wanted was to snuggle up with Phant in her warm bed and fall asleep. She anxiously looked around for her suitcase and groped with her hands in the black night to try and find it, but there was nothing there except other people huddled together in the cold, wet, and windy boat. Suddenly, the silence was shattered by bombs and guns exploding around them and the tracer lights crossing the sky above. When Tita realized that Phant was in her suitcase and had been left behind on the dock, overcome by sadness and fear, she burst into tears. Her brother Robert put his arm around her, and her mama stroked her hair. Tita felt comforted by the love of her family, but the loss of Phant would be with her forever.
And thereafter, Anita, of course, went along with her life, and Phant then went on a fabulous series of adventures, which led him from Latvia all the way to the west coast of Canada to Victoria. And in this final scene of the book, Phant finds his way to another Christmas bazaar with his current owner, Gisela, where he is found again by Anita.
Phant slept soundly through the long journey in Gisela's old station wagon, all the way through town and into the country to the Christmas bazaar. Suddenly he woke up by the bright lights and noisy activities surrounding him. He looked around in amazement at the Christmas decorations and thought for a minute that he was back in Berlin so many years ago. There too he lay in a basket, but then he had a clown, a lion, and a long snake for company. And then out of the blue, the most exciting, fantastic, incredible, and wonderful thing happened. A voice above him cried out, "Oh, look, Nicholas, there's Phant! I found Phant! My very own darling Phant!" And before he realized what was happening, he found himself pressed against someone's cheek and wet teardrops falling on his head. "Oh, Phant, I can hardly believe that I found you. Oh, Phant, I'm Tita, your long-lost Tita. Please, please believe me and do not look so worried. It's really me. The two of us were 10 years old when we lost each other during that beastly war. And now we are 60 years old. I have gray hair and wrinkles, and I'm an Omi now. And you, darling Phant, feel a bit different, a bit knobbly. But never mind, I love you all the same." Tita held Phant in front of her and gave him a big, loving smile. That was when Phant recognized her as his very own Tita, and he flapped his ears and his tail so hard from sheer joy that he nearly flew out of Tita's hand. Tita looked down at him and thought, "What a great story this will be for my grandchildren."
And there's little Phant in his moment of joy, and as he now again comes out into the world. Anita, have you got your Phant there that you can show us?
I have him on my bed.
Okay.
That's where he lives.
That's right. He's peeking out
His
between
life
your
is very boring now, and he's beginning to fall apart.
So Anita, there he is. There he is. Let's see him. Come on.
There, yeah. Now I can.
Oh, that's great. Okay.
Yeah.
And her name on here is Marina's iPad if you're looking for Anita. Anyway, So Anita, you had this life experience that started when you were a wee babe, really. And then it went through, this incredible time of growing up, the idyllic time in Latvia, and then the war and Canada and dislocation and all these things. And then coming to...
But there was London in between and England.
London in between, indeed. And then you and Nicholas finding your way, indeed, through having received it in Subud in Ottawa to the West Coast and to Victoria, which I think I've heard you call your paradise.
Yes.
And eventually finding Phant again. What was your experience? Can you tell us a little bit about your experience, your life experience, and then your experience of how you came to write the book?
Well, my life experience was a mess, I guess, because we were in the war. And after the war, the hardships after the war. By that time, I was in England. But when I came to Canada, because I had no education at all, it wasn't easy. And my husband did find work, but it was not really up to scratch. So I had to work too. And I did alterations, and I took in an extra child. And a telephone call came with a lady asking me whether I would shorten or lengthen her winter coat. And I said, yes, of course. And we made arrangements for her to come and see me next day with the coat. And then out of the blue, she asked me whether I had read an author by the name of Bennett. I do not remember his first name. And I said, no, I haven't. And she told me what it was about, that he is in Britain and that he is involved in a spiritual group from the East and part of the world, which was called Subud. And this was his story. And I said, no. I said, actually, I have very little time to read because I have 4 children in my hands. So, but my husband, I know, would be extremely interested. And so she brought the book along when she came the next day with the coat. And the other thing she said to me on the telephone call, she said, I must apologize. I don't know what made me mention this book to you. And I remember thinking, maybe I even said it. I said, Mrs. Hamilton, this was meant to be. And my God, I can say that honestly, it was meant to be. Because it wasn't long afterwards that we sold our house and came to beautiful Vancouver Island and Victoria.
And that was a transformative change, wasn't it?
Totally. Yes.
And the family. So after you had discovered then, while you were living in Victoria, so many years after, you discovered your Phant again. How did it come about that what was the process by which you started your writing?
I made lots of friends, and people used to say to me, Anita, you've had such a fantastic life, such an interesting life. Fantastic maybe isn't the right expression. And why don't you write it down? And I said, I find it very difficult to do anything to do with writing and reading in public because I used to stutter very, very badly. I used to lose my speech. And I only had 5 years of schooling, and they were practically the first 2 years in bomb shelters. And then the last 3 years were in a totally different language in London. Anyway, I just didn't dare. But then I did go to the seniors center where I lived in Victoria, and they advertised writing your memoirs. And I said, right, I'm going to pull my socks up and I'm going to try it out. And I did. And I loved doing it. And the first thing that I actually wrote was the memories of my first 20 years of my life. And then, of course, as always, I thought of Phant because I had never forgotten him. And I think through all of this process, my first writing, then even wrote a little cookbook. I think Subud in many instances gave me the courage to do something which under normal circumstances I would never have dared. Mm-hmm. And I think this is, I don't know, at my ripe old age now of what am I, 87, I don't really think it matters anymore. But anyway, I'm forever grateful that Subud is with us.
Yeah, yeah, and that's great. The courage part, it's interesting. Bapak, in sort of his final years, he talked about courage a lot and how we needed to have courage. So that fits in so beautifully with some of those final messages which he gave to us as Subud members around the world. And I remember, just as part of this whole process, because you had written Phant, and we had talked about Phant for a long time because I design books and help people publish them, but that we couldn't find the right illustrator. And so it was about a year and a half ago that Wiluya and I came to have tea with you at your home on Vancouver Island, and sitting there with you and your grandson Nicholas, who we knew was an artist, sitting there with him, and Wiluya looks across the table and says, well, why doesn't Nicholas do the illustrations? And it was just one of those moments where the serendipity of the moment just sort of happened, didn't it? And I think Nick's illustrations are marvelous.
Yes.
Yeah.
And he said yes,
and they were done in a week.
They were done in a week because, and then he said to me, I don't do illustrations. Because I had asked him before, and he said, I don't do illustrations. Yeah. Well, and there he did. I mean, it was miraculous.
Well,
it must be them in a matter of days.
Exactly. And well, Wiluya, thanks to Wiluya for.
I wanted more, and he said no.
Yeah, I know he did. Yeah. So he got the message, I think, maybe from somebody else saying, Nick, you can do this. And then he did a certain number and he said, okay, that's it. I was amazing. So
yeah. That's right. Now go on.
Sorry, go on. Go ahead.
Now this is maybe another Subud possibility that there's a picture here where Phant is going up into the moon, far. So my wish is that the story of Phant will be able to fly off into at least the Western world, and that it could be published in the English-speaking world, mm-hmm. or Berlin, and all of that, maybe even Latvia. Wouldn't Latvian people think it's a nice story? But
getting back to his homeland.
I know how to do that. Maybe one of your people would know how to do that.
Indeed,
That
and so maybe
that
everybody could think about some
would be
ideas, but
fantastic.
we'll just to update everybody. Here's an article that came out about a year ago in Anita's local newspaper. This wonderful kind of full-page article, and I love this quotation from it: "A story for those who hold hope, adventure, family, and gratitude close to their hearts. The story of Phant is a touchstone tale for all generations." And I think that. And then about a month after this, Anita was on CBC Radio here on Vancouver Island as well, and gave a great interview. And you know, in this time of particularly difficult time, Anita, I think this quotation from your CBC Radio interview is marvelous. You know, as a touchstone in helping all of us to have hope that even when things, you know, don't look so good, but you must never lose your sense of humor and must never ever give up hope. So it's a marvelous philosophy of life that you have.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody, and I will put in the chat my email address. If you could, and if you have any questions, suggestions for us as we take Phant on his journey, I know Anita and I would be most appreciative. Thanks so much, Mariana. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, I'll just say, Anita, that was I find that very, very moving. Actually, I'm not sure about. I'm actually interested in having a chat with you about your experiences, because I write military books, and I'm just in. I know you're talking about Phant, the elephant, but I put my email address on the chat. Can you send me an email, because I'd like to have a chat with you? I think it's fantastic what you said. Anyway, that's all I want to say, really.
That'd be great, James. Thank you. I'll get in touch, and maybe we could do a Zoom with Anita. That'd be fantastic. Thank you very much.
Resolved.
Yeah, no, Arifin will help you.
And anybody else? I can't see everybody. No.
That was so beautiful. And I just want to know where I can get the book.
Well,
Okay.
this is the problem, you see.
No,
this is the problem.
I will, Hester, I will put my email. It'll be in the chat, and get in touch with me and I shall arrange that. And anybody else as well, of course. And if you have any ideas or contacts, even in Latvia, Germany, any other countries that might sort of be closely associated with this story, that would be super too.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hester.
Okay. All right. So thank you
Thanks,
so
Marianne.
much, Anita.
Thank you.
Arifin. That was wonderful. Such a darling story. Just amazing.
Thank you.